One of the most important things that we can do is to tell our story. And this is narrative magic. It's an acknowledgement that we are storytelling creatures. We are storytelling animals. We are meaning-making beings. And this is an idea that doesn't belong to any one philosophy. It is what we do inside our minds, inside our psyches. Sometimes people tell me that they're not creative, and I'm very confused about this, because what do you think it is that we're doing every day if not telling the story of our lives? We are creating our own reality. We are all being extremely creative, but sometimes people don't recognize that they're being creative because they feel like they're not doing something that's traditional creativity. They're not painting, they're not writing stories, they're not whatever it is that they think of as real creativity. They're not doing that, and so they kind of dismiss themselves, and I wonder if that comes in some people from a feeling like they weren't good enough at art or whatever. They didn't feel comfortable creating in that way, and so they've decided that they are not creative. I don't see how we couldn't all be creative, but for some people, creativity and bringing new things into the world is a priority, and for other people, it's not something they want to engage in. It's not a passion for them. They might be interested in something else, and that's okay. It's just that as human beings, we're always creating, whether we're doing so in a way that we think that we label as creativity, that we think of as creativity. We're telling our stories. We're shaping our world. And a really powerful thing to do is to deliberately tell your story, to deliberately write down, or when you tell people your story, to do it in a way that centers and empowers you, so that you're not the victim. You're not the princess in the tower that needs to be rescued, who is a passive bystander in her own life, so that you are the hero, the heroine, the one who's going on this journey, the one who is the active participant in your own life. And it's so common for human beings to give our power away, to say, oh, that person did the thing to me, that person has the power. But when we do that, the relieving thing about that is we're no longer responsible. All the power's out there. The bad thing about that is when we're giving away our responsibility, we're also giving our power away. So how can we possibly do anything about it if we're not an active agent in our life, if we're not centering ourselves in our story? And sometimes we don't know what to do. And that's okay. We don't know what to do, and we feel like we are the victim or the passive bystander, the one who's had the injustice done to them. And whenever somebody suggests, oh, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Sometimes we can even resist that because we want them to understand, can't you see, I can't do anything. That won't work. That won't work. I am here. I'm stuck. I'm helpless. And if we're genuinely helpless, and if those suggestions that people have for us genuinely won't work, that's a really hard place to be. But there's always something that we can do. Sometimes we have to relax and de-escalate our emotions because they've gotten so big, because we're feeling so much powerlessness. And when we want to do that, we can tune into our bodies. We can do things that help us to relax. And we can feel those feelings, whatever it is. Is it anger? Is it longing? Is it sadness? Is it hopelessness? We can feel those feelings, because opening up to feeling them from a state of presence actually begins to metabolize them. It's like we're consuming them, we're eating them, that we're taking them in. And that is a powerful thing to do. Consuming the emotions, accepting them, taking them in, feeling our feelings is really powerful magic. And once we've started to absorb and consume those feelings, the beautiful thing about that is that the overwhelm lessens and some of that tension dissolves, and then we can see a little bit more clearly. And we still might not know what to do. The thing is, you don't always know what to do. Sometimes it's a matter of doing the inner work so that the outer world shifts subtly. It's a matter of holding space so that a new insight can occur to us. Or another thing we can do is to work with the tension of opposites, of one thing and another thing. And Carl Jung talked about this, which is a powerful inner work to do, working with tensions. It's very Saturnian work, where we can hold the two opposites, or whatever the tension is, and lean into that tension, stretch into that tension, and through that a new way will emerge. And this is how new things come into the world. It's often through a tension, through a contraction. Something has to stretch and be challenged for something new to come into the world, to be birthed. And so we can work with these things. This is the kind of magic that I practice most of the time. It's inner magic, it's narrative magic. And in some ways it's very rational, and in some ways it's very, very intuitive. And you can be both of those things. You can believe in logic and rationality to a point. You can use those tools of the conscious mind, but they will only get you so far in terms of having a satisfying life, because it's only one level. And some people like to deny that level entirely, and they like to believe in magical thinking that is very Neptunian, that kind of transcends, and that will only get you so far. There is wisdom in taking a lot of different approaches that are functioning on different levels, on subtle and energetic levels, on rational logical levels, on physical levels, on all these different levels, the levels of the body and the emotions, of the soul and spirituality. Being able to function in all these different ways and bringing the wisdom in all these different ways can help us to have a really holistic and well-rounded understanding, learning about traditions in a respectful way, including the traditions of our ancestors, including whatever coherent systems are out there that evolved in a way that was connected with nature, because that's how we learn how to naturally human in a world that is becoming more and more disconnected because of so much technology, because of so much disruption. Everything is so fast-paced. So we can draw from nature, we can draw from the cycles of nature and the rhythms of nature, and from our own intuition. And that's how I like to practice magic. I I used to struggle to communicate about all of these things that made sense to me that some other people didn't grasp, including a lot of people in my family who had a very atheist kind of outlook, a very scientific, materialist kind of worldview. And I'd really struggle because I'd say, isn't the moon affecting us? Isn't this, look at all these magical things. And, some people would really resist that, and they'd find it quite hard to have those conversations. But the interesting thing about that is, through having these people in my life that have these very limited perspectives, and like deliberately limited, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, not believing and not feeling and not understanding subtle magical things, that's just how some people work, and it can work quite well for them. And other people do have all sorts of other intuitive understandings of the world. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if that's just your paradigm. And it's taken me a long time to understand that, because I used to really struggle and feel misunderstood by people who, because of their limited ontology, would be quite dismissive of me. But the blessing in that is that I've learned how to communicate with people who don't understand those more intuitive things quite so well, to the point where I can talk about magic with somebody who is in that limited, modernist, atheistic kind of paradigm, and they sort of understand what I'm talking about. And this feels like there's a big shift that's happening in the world, where magic is coming back into the world. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors lived in a world where everything was so much more interconnected. All of our ancestors were animists. They would relate to nature, to the mountains, to the rivers, to the ocean, to the sky, to the earth, to the trees, as beings that had mythos and personality, and they saw the world as an active, living, magical system. And as we've developed in our knowledge and become more reductionist, reduced things down, we've dismissed a lot of that. And that's really to our detriment in some ways, but has also been a lot of interesting learning in other ways. And the beautiful thing about the magic coming back is that we can reconnect. When I say the magic's coming back, I think we're waking up to the magic that was already there. I believe that many of the things that we take for granted are extremely magical. Books are amazing, that we have developed symbols that we can tell stories through. And I can tell a story, I can imagine a whole world, and I can put that into a narrative, and I can give that to you, and you can have a beautiful hallucination based on things that I invented, except you will see them totally differently to how I might see them, or other people who read the book might see them. And that is extremely magical. But you know what else is magic? Inspiration that comes through us, and creative people will talk. People who engage deliberately with creativity will talk about how inspiration will strike them, will flow through them. We don't know where that comes from. And sometimes this happens with scientific discoveries too, and we have these instances of multiple discoveries. So this inspiration is floating around the world, and it just happens to land in multiple places at the same time, and multiple people will invent this technology all at the same time. That is a kind of magic. We don't know where ideas come from. We don't know what consciousness is. Consciousness is all we experience, and it's a total mystery to us. And I think that in itself is quite magical. And you know that there's so much magic in nature that we have no understanding of. Termites will build enormous complex structures, and they have tiny brains. How do they know how to do architecture? It's very unclear, and yet this is a thing, a complex system that has a cycle to it. Eels will migrate all the way from the middle of the world down to New Zealand, and they'll lay eggs, and to do that they have to migrate all the way back into the middle of the world again, and they don't follow tidal patterns, but somehow these baby eels will float back to where they need to go to reach maturity, where their parents also reached maturity. You know, there's all these cycles that are happening all the time that we can't explain with science and rationality completely. And yet science is very useful in what it does do in testing things. You know, the scientific method is great for testing things and measuring things that can be tested and measured. And we can hold space for all of those things.